Princess had everything anyone could ever want. Born into a wealthy family in Canada, she was used to getting whatever she desired. At 18, she was spoiled, entitled, and utterly disconnected from the struggles of ordinary people. Her father, Mr. Martins, a successful businessman, had tried several times to discipline her, but Princess simply ignored him. One day, Princess did something that made her father decide enough was enough. She had thrown a lavish party at their home without permission, causing damage worth millions of naira. Mr. Martins was furious. "Princess," he said sternly, "this is the last straw. You need to learn responsibility and respect." "I don't care," Princess shot back, arms crossed. "You can't control me, Dad. I'm an adult." Mr. Martins sighed deeply. "If you're an adult, it's time you started acting like one. You're going back to Nigeria." Princess laughed. "Nigeria? What for? There's nothing for me there." "You're wrong," Mr. Martins replied. "You're going to enroll in JAMB lessons with other students preparing for university. No special treatment, no luxury. You will learn how life works beyond this bubble you live in." Despite her protests, Princess found herself on a plane to Nigeria. Her Aunt Grace, a humble teacher, was waiting for her at the airport. "Welcome, Princess," Grace said warmly. "I hope you're ready to learn some life lessons." Princess rolled her eyes. "Whatever." The next day, Princess accompanied her aunt to the JAMB lesson center. It was a modest building filled with eager students who had dreams of making it to university. Among them were James, a brilliant but quiet boy who had to work as a mechanic to pay for his lessons, and Eunice, a cheerful girl who sold fruits after class to support her younger siblings. When Princess walked in with her designer clothes and arrogant attitude, the entire room went silent. She looked at the students and scoffed. "Is this where I'm supposed to study?" she asked loudly. "This place is so basic." James glanced at Eunice, shaking his head. "She doesn't know what life is really about," he whispered. The teacher, Mr. John, introduced Princess to the class. "This is Princess. She'll be joining us from today." The class murmured among themselves. Princess ignored them and took a seat at the back, far from everyone else. As the days went by, Princess made no effort to fit in. She didn't talk to anyone and barely paid attention in class. One day, during a group assignment, Mr. John paired her with James and Eunice. "Why do I have to work with them?" Princess asked rudely. "Because this is a team effort," Mr. John said firmly. Reluctantly, Princess joined James and Eunice. During the project, James shared his story about working late nights at the mechanic shop to afford his studies. Eunice talked about her struggles to balance school and her responsibilities at home. Princess listened quietly, something stirring inside her. For the first time, she realized how different their lives were from hers, but her arrogance wasn't gone yet. When the group presented their project, Princess took all the credit, dismissing the hard work James and Eunice had put in. Later that day, Eunice confronted her. "Princess, do you think the world revolves around you? You have no idea what people go through just to survive." James added, "You may be rich, but you're poor in kindness and understanding." Princess stormed off, but their words lingered in her mind. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about her father's words, the struggles James and Eunice faced, and how out of place she felt. For the first time in her life, Princess wondered if she was the problem. The next morning, Princess woke up feeling restless. She replayed Eunice's words over and over in her head, but instead of admitting she might be wrong, her pride pushed her to act even colder. At the lesson center, Eunice and James avoided her. She noticed, but she told herself she didn't care. Yet something about their distance made her uncomfortable. During break time, Princess sat alone, scrolling through her phone. Eunice and James were seated under a tree, sharing snacks and laughing softly. Other students had formed little groups, chatting about their dreams and struggles. For the first time, Princess felt lonely. Later that day, Mr. John announced a class project. Each student was to write a short essay about their life and share it in front of the class. When it was Princess's turn, she hesitated. She hadn't prepared anything, thinking the exercise was beneath her. But standing in front of everyone, She realized she couldn't avoid it. "I don't really have anything to say," she began. "I've lived a good life. My dad is rich, and I've never had to struggle for anything." The class was silent. Some students looked annoyed, others bored. Eunice whispered to James, "She doesn't even understand the point of this." Princess noticed the reaction and felt a flicker of shame. She quickly added, "But I guess I don't know what it's like to work hard for something. I've never needed to." Mr. John nodded. "Thank you, Princess. You've just acknowledged something very important. Life is about more than what you're given. It's about what you do with it." As she returned to her seat, James glanced at her, his expression softer. Eunice, however, still looked unimpressed. The following week, the lesson center organized a community outreach program. The students were asked to visit a nearby orphanage to interact with the children and help with chores. Princess tried to get out of it. "I didn't come here to clean or babysit," she told her Aunt Grace at home. Grace gave her a knowing smile. "You'll find that helping others often teaches us more about ourselves." Reluctantly, Princess joined the others at the orphanage. The place was small, but filled with laughter as the children ran around, excited to see the visitors. Eunice and James immediately got to work, cleaning and helping to serve food. Princess stood awkwardly by the door, unsure what to do. A little girl with bright eyes and a shy smile approached her, tugging at her sleeve. "Are you a princess?" the girl asked, her voice full of wonder. Princess hesitated, then nodded slightly. "I guess you could say that." The girl beamed. "Can you play with us?" Princess wanted to refuse, but something about the child's innocence melted her resistance. She followed the girl to a group of children playing a simple clapping game. At first she felt out of place, but as the children laughed and included her, she found herself smiling genuinely for the first time in a long while. James and Eunice noticed her change. James leaned toward Eunice. Maybe there's hope for her after all. Eunice folded her arms. "We'll see." As the day ended, Princess sat quietly, watching the children wave goodbye. Her heart felt lighter, but she didn't fully understand why. That night, back at home, she told Grace about her experience. "Those kids, they don't have anything, yet they're so happy. How is that possible?" Grace smiled gently. "Happiness doesn't come from what you have. It comes from gratitude, from kindness, and from the connections you make with others." Princess didn't respond, but her mind was racing. For the first time, she felt a spark of curiosity about a life beyond wealth and privilege. The next day at the lesson center, Princess arrived early. She wasn't sure why, but something inside her wanted to see what Eunice and James were doing before class started. She found them sitting under the same tree as always, with their books open. Eunice was explaining a math problem to James, her voice calm and patient. Princess hesitated, clutching her designer bag tightly. Then, summoning courage, she approached them. "Can I sit here?" she asked. Eunice looked up, surprised. James gave her a small smile and shifted to make space. "Sure," he said. Princess sat down awkwardly. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then she cleared her throat. "I just wanted to say about the other day, when I took credit for our project. That wasn't fair." "I'm sorry." James nodded, accepting her apology. Eunice, however, remained quiet, watching Princess closely. Princess continued, her voice softer now. "And yesterday, at the orphanage, I saw how hard both of you worked. It made me realize I don't know anything about real life." Eunice finally spoke. "It's not just about working hard. It's about understanding people and caring for something beyond yourself." Princess looked down, feeling a sting of guilt. "I'm trying," she said quietly. Eunice exchanged a glance with James, then gave a small nod. "All right, let's see if you mean it." From that day on, Princess began to change, little by little. She started paying attention in class, asking questions when she didn't understand. She even offered to help Eunice and James with their studies, though she often ended up learning more from them. One afternoon, Eunice invited Princess to join her at her fruit stand after class. At first, Princess wrinkled her nose at the idea of selling fruits on the roadside, but she agreed. When they arrived, Eunice handed her a basket of oranges. "You'll call out to customers," Eunice said. Princess hesitated, then awkwardly called out, "Fresh oranges, come and buy." Eunice burst out laughing. "Louder, Princess, no one can hear you." Princess tried again, her voice stronger this time. Soon customers started approaching, and Princess was surprised by how much she enjoyed the interaction. One elderly woman bought a bunch of bananas and smiled at Princess. "You remind me of my granddaughter," she said. "She's studying hard to become a nurse. Are you a student too?" Princess nodded slowly. "Yes, Ma. I'm learning a lot these days." When the woman left, Princess turned to Eunice. "Do you always meet such kind people?" "Not always," Eunice replied. "But when you treat people with respect, you'll see the good in them more often." Later that evening, Princess helped Eunice pack up the stand. As they walked home together, Eunice said, "You're not so bad when you try, Princess." Princess smiled, feeling a warmth she couldn't explain. "Thanks, Eunice. I'm still figuring things out." At home, Princess shared her day with Aunt Grace, who listened with pride. "You're growing, Princess. Keep going, and you'll discover parts of yourself you never knew existed." But not everyone was happy with Princess's transformation. A girl in the lesson center named Bella, who had always envied Princess's wealth, began spreading rumors about her. "She's only pretending to be nice," Bella told the other students. "She's still the same spoiled girl inside." When Princess heard about the rumors, she felt a mix of anger and sadness. For the first time, she cared about what people thought of her, and it hurt to know someone doubted her sincerity. Determined to prove herself, Princess decided to volunteer for another community outreach program. This time, it was to clean up a nearby market and educate the sellers on keeping their environment clean. Eunice and James joined her, impressed by her initiative. Even some of the students who had believed Bella's rumors started to see Princess in a new light. As they worked together, Princess felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. But deep down, she wondered if she could ever truly escape her past and earn the respect of those around her. The market cleanup day arrived with much excitement. Princess, Eunice, and James joined the other volunteers at the market square, where heaps of trash and stagnant water had gathered over time. Princess wrinkled her nose at the smell, but didn't complain. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Eunice asked, raising an eyebrow as she handed Princess a pair of gloves. Princess took them and nodded firmly. "I'm ready." As the group began cleaning, some of the market women watched with curiosity, whispering among themselves. Princess overheard one of them say, "Isn't that the big man's daughter? What's she doing here?" At first, their stares made her uncomfortable, but James nudged her playfully. "Ignore them. Actions speak louder than words." Slowly, Princess began to relax. She worked alongside the others, clearing trash and sweeping the market stalls. The physical labor was exhausting, but she felt a strange sense of fulfillment with every bag of trash she carried to the dump. "Good job, Princess," James said, giving her a thumbs up. She smiled, her face streaked with sweat but glowing with pride. "Thanks, James." During a short break, Princess sat down under a tree sipping water. An elderly woman selling vegetables approached her. "My daughter," the woman said softly, "you have a good heart. I see how hard you're working. May God bless you." Princess felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. "Thank you, Ma." The woman handed her a small bag of fresh tomatoes. "Take this. It's just a little gift." Princess hesitated, but accepted it with a grateful smile. "Thank you so much." As the day went on, Princess noticed Bella standing at a distance, watching her with a frown. Bella had refused to join the cleanup, claiming it was a waste of time. When the work was done, the market looked transformed. The volunteers stood back, admiring their efforts, and the market women clapped in appreciation. "You all did an amazing job," said Mr. John, who had come to oversee the event. "This is what teamwork and community spirit look like. Well done, everyone." Princess felt a surge of pride, but she knew she wasn't doing this for praise. She was doing it because, for the first time in her life, she felt like she was part of something meaningful. Back at the lesson center the next day, the atmosphere had shifted. Students who had once avoided Princess now greeted her warmly. Even Bella seemed unsure of how to treat her. During lunch, Bella approached their table. "Can I sit here?" she asked, her tone unusually polite. Eunice exchanged a glance with James, then shrugged. "Sure." Bella sat down, fidgeting with her drink. I just wanted to say I was wrong about you, Princess. You're not as bad as I thought." Princess blinked in surprise. "Thank you, Bella, that means a lot." The moment felt like a victory, but Princess knew her journey wasn't over. Later that evening, Aunt Grace called her into the living room. "Princess, your dad called today. He's coming back from Canada next month and he wants to see how you've been doing." Princess's stomach tightened. "Does he know everything?" Grace smiled knowingly. "I told him a little, but it's up to you to show him how much you've grown." Princess nodded, determination lighting up her eyes. She wanted to make her father proud, not by boasting about her wealth, but by showing him the person she was becoming. But as the days passed, challenges arose. Bella, though seemingly friendly now, still carried traces of jealousy. She began spreading another rumor, claiming Princess was only helping others to gain attention. Princess tried to ignore it, but the whispers began to affect her. One afternoon, she overheard a group of students talking behind her back. "She's just pretending," one of them said. "She'll go back to her old ways as soon as her dad comes back." That night, Princess sat in her room feeling defeated. Was she really changing, or was she just putting on a show? Eunice's words echoed in her mind. "It's not just about working hard. It's about understanding people and caring for something beyond yourself." With renewed determination, Princess decided she wouldn't let the doubts of others stop her. She made a plan to take her efforts to the next level by organizing a charity event at the lesson center. The charity event idea was bold, and Princess knew it wouldn't be easy. She brought it up to Eunice and James the next day during their study session. "I want to organize an event to support the less privileged students here," she said. "We could provide school supplies, food, and maybe even hold a fun day for them." Eunice raised an eyebrow. "That's a great idea, but where will you get the funds?" Princess hesitated. "I'll use my savings, and I'll ask my aunt for help." James smiled. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" Princess nodded firmly. "I want to prove to myself and to everyone that this isn't just a phase." Eunice and James agreed to help, and together they began planning. Princess reached out to Aunt Grace, who was thrilled by the idea. "I'll support you however I can," Grace said. The three friends spent the next week preparing. Princess used her connections to get donations from local businesses, while Eunice and James rallied the other students to volunteer. Bella surprisingly offered to help as well. On the day of the event, the lesson center was buzzing with activity. Students and volunteers set up tables with books, clothes, and food. A small stage was decorated for performances, and a bounce house had been rented for the younger children. As the event kicked off, Princess stood at the entrance, welcoming families with a warm smile. Seeing the joy on the children's faces filled her heart with a sense of accomplishment she had never felt before. Midway through the event, Princess spotted Bella standing by herself, looking uneasy. She walked over to her. "Hey, Bella," Princess said gently. "Thank you for helping out today. It means a lot." Bella looked at her, surprised. "You're thanking me?" "Of course," Princess replied. "This event wouldn't have been possible without everyone's effort, including yours." Bella's expression softened, and for the first time, Princess saw a genuine smile on her face. As the sun began to set, the highlight of the event, a talent show, began. Students performed songs, dances, and even short skits. When it was Eunice's turn, she surprised everyone by reciting a heartfelt poem about friendship and growth. Princess felt tears sting her eyes as she listened. She realized how much Eunice and James had influenced her journey. When the event ended, Mr. John, who had also attended, walked up to Princess. "You've done something remarkable today," he said. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you, sir," Princess replied, her voice filled with gratitude. That night, back at home, Princess sat with Aunt Grace, recounting every detail of the event. "I feel like I've finally done something meaningful," she said. Grace smiled. "You're growing, Princess. But remember, growth is a journey, not a destination. Keep going." The next day at the lesson center, Princess felt a shift in the way people treated her. The students who had doubted her now greeted her warmly, and even Bella seemed to have turned a new leaf. But Princess knew her journey wasn't over. Her father's return was approaching, and she wanted to show him the person she had become. However, just as things seemed to be falling into place, a phone call came that evening. Aunt Grace answered it, her face growing serious. When she hung up, she turned to Princess with a troubled expression. "It's your father," she said. "He's coming home sooner than expected, and he has some news to share." Princess felt her stomach drop. "What kind of news?" Grace hesitated. "He didn't say. But whatever it is, we'll face it together." The news of her father's early return made Princess restless. She spent the next few days trying to prepare herself mentally, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. What could he possibly have to say? When the day finally came, Princess stood by the window, watching as a sleek black car pulled into the driveway. Her heart pounded as her father stepped out, looking as composed and authoritative as ever. "Princess," Aunt Grace said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Remember everything you've learned. Be yourself." Princess nodded and walked to the door to greet him. "Daddy," she said softly as he entered. Her father gave her a long look, his face unreadable. "Princess," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "It's good to see you again." They sat in the living room, the air thick with tension. Grace served drinks and quietly excused herself to give them privacy. "I've been hearing a lot about you," her father began. "Your aunt told me about the changes you've made, the charity event, and how you've been helping at the lesson center." Princess shifted nervously. I wanted to do something meaningful, Daddy. I wanted to change." Her father leaned back, studying her carefully. "Change is good, Princess, but what matters is whether it's real. Are you truly committed to this new path, or are you just doing it to impress me?" The question stung, but Princess met his gaze. "I'm doing this for myself, Daddy. At first I wanted to prove something, but now it's more than that. I've learned so much from Eunice, James, and everyone at the lesson center. I've learned what it means to care about others, to work hard and to appreciate life." Her father's expression softened slightly, but then he sighed. "That's good to hear, but there's something we need to talk about." Princess tensed. "What is it?" "I've decided to relocate back to Nigeria," he said. "Permanently. I want us to be closer as a family." Princess blinked in surprise. "You're staying? Here?" "Yes," he replied, "but that's not all. I've also decided to send you to a boarding school. I believe it will help you stay focused and continue on this path of growth." The words hit Princess like a brick. Boarding school? After everything she had built at the lesson center. "But Daddy, I've made friends here. I've found a purpose. I don't want to leave," she said, her voice trembling. Her father sighed. "Princess, I understand that this is difficult, but life is about adapting to new situations. You'll make new friends and you'll have more opportunities to grow." Tears welled up in Princess's eyes. She didn't want to leave the people who had changed her life. That evening, she confided in Eunice and James about her father's decision. "I don't want to go," she said, her voice breaking. "I finally feel like I belong somewhere." Eunice placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Princess, no matter where you go, the lessons you've learned here will stay with you, and we'll always be your friends." James nodded. "You've come so far, Princess. Don't see this as an end. It's a new beginning." Their words gave her some comfort, but the thought of leaving still weighed heavily on her. The next day, Bella surprised Princess by approaching her with an envelope. "What's this?" Princess asked. "It's a letter," Bella said, looking uncharacteristically shy. "I wrote it to thank you for everything. You changed me too, you know. I was jealous of you at first, but now I see you're someone worth looking up to." Princess opened the letter and read it, her heart swelling with emotion. "You're going to do amazing things, Princess," Bella added before walking away. As the days passed, Princess prepared for her departure. On her last day at the lesson center, the students and teachers held a small farewell gathering for her. Eunice read another heartfelt poem, and James presented her with a scrapbook filled with pictures and notes from her friends. "This is to remind you of where you started," James said. "Never forget how far you've come." Princess hugged them both tightly, tears streaming down her face. "I'll never forget any of you." As she left the lesson center for the last time, Princess felt a mix of sadness and hope. She didn't know what the future held, but she was determined to carry the lessons she had learned with her. As Princess settled into her new reality, boarding school loomed closer. She cherished her last days with Aunt Grace and often reflected on her time at the lesson center. The day of her departure arrived. Aunt Grace drove her to the airport, offering her gentle encouragement along the way. "Remember, Princess, life will always test you, but the strength you've gained will help you pass those tests. Keep your head high." At the boarding school, life was different, but not as daunting as she'd imagined. Princess quickly found herself adapting to the structured environment, drawing on the lessons of humility, resilience, and compassion she'd learned. One evening, while sitting on her dorm bed, she pulled out the scrapbook James had given her. She flipped through the pages, smiling at the memories and the words of encouragement from her friends. A sudden knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Her new friend, Sarah, peeked in. "Hey, Princess. We're heading to the common room to study. Want to join us?" Princess smiled and nodded. "I'll be right there." As the weeks turned into months, Princess began to thrive in her new environment. She excelled academically and socially, earning the respect of her peers. She even initiated a charity project within the school, inspired by her experience at the lesson center. One day during a school event, Princess was invited to give a speech. Standing on the stage, she took a deep breath and looked at the crowd. "Growing up, I thought the world revolved around me," she began. "But life has a way of teaching us lessons in unexpected ways. I learned that true wealth isn't in what you own, but in how you touch the lives of others. I learned to listen, to care, and to give. And I carry those lessons with me every day." Her speech received a standing ovation, but what truly touched her heart was the pride she saw in her father's eyes as he stood in the audience. After the event, her father approached her. His usual stern demeanor softened. "Princess," he said, "I wasn't sure if sending you here was the right decision, but seeing you today, I know it was. You've grown into someone I'm deeply proud of." Tears filled Princess's eyes. "Thank you, Daddy. But I couldn't have done it without the people who believed in me. Eunice, James, Aunt Grace, and even Bella." Her father nodded. "Never forget those who helped you become who you are." Years later, Princess returned to the lesson center, now a thriving adult, working to make a difference in her community. She had built a foundation to support underprivileged children, continuing the work that had first inspired her. When she walked into the lesson center, Eunice and James greeted her with warm smiles. "You never really left, did you?" Eunice teased. "No," Princess replied with a laugh. "This place will always be home." As she looked around at the lively, hopeful faces of the students, she realized just how far she had come. She wasn't the same girl who had walked through those doors with an attitude and a chip on her shoulder. She was someone new, someone better, and she knew that her journey, though challenging, had been worth every step. Life sometimes places us in situations we don't understand, just like Princess being sent to the lesson center. But those moments are often where we grow the most. Humility, kindness, and the ability to learn from others can turn even the toughest challenges into stepping stones for greatness. Never be too proud to listen or to change. Your transformation starts the moment you open your heart to new lessons. No matter where life takes you, trust that every experience is shaping you into a stronger, better person. Keep moving forward. Your story is still being written. Like this story? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one.